We are dealing now with the rhythm of God, the rhythm that pulsates throughout the universe in a very special way. You flow with it, or you flow against it. And what you experience is determined by your awareness of what you are doing in relation to that rhythm of God.
Greetings from Terra Nova Adventure Play Environment, Richmond, BC, Canada, and welcome to Stir Up Your Purpose channel. I believe your day is going great. The Terra Nova Adventure Play Environment is a play experience unique to the Lower Mainland. It is the result of an extensive and highly successful community planning process and reflects the agricultural traditions of the area and complements the city's growing collection of innovative parks. The play environment represents a major departure from other contemporary playgrounds in that most of the features are custom designed and manufactured using British Columbia sourced yellow cedar and sustainable design practices rather than conventional off-the-shelf metal and plastic products. The last time I was here was in 2019 when I came to watch the wintering snow geese, and I witnessed the most beautiful sunset I have ever seen. And I came here today for relaxation and hopefully catch another beautiful sunset. Today I'm sharing a third class from the Mount Hood seminar series given by Fitch in 1976. I hope you are able to watch the first class titled 10 Soul Commandments and the second class titled World Transformation. Altogether, there are 10 classes in this series, and this third class that I'm sharing today is titled Infinite I-Ness. In this series, Harp takes the listeners on a soul journey. It brings out the inner truth of the symbolic meanings of the 10 Commandments. And in this third class, he expands on the deeper meaning of the third and fourth commandments. You're going to love this talk, especially if your desire is to live the infinite way and willing to put the concepts and principles to practice. What I can assure you is that if you can abide and realize this truth within you, spirit will respond and the form, the body, will be moved to do that which is reasonable and sensible. The only question is, will you respond to those inner promptings and leadings without second-guessing yourself? I would like to share a personal story to illustrate this. Way back in 2000 or 2001, that was 6 or 7 years after my marriage. In that time, we were believing God for our first child. We believed that it will happen. And during that time, in vitro fertilization, that is IVF, was getting popular. And someone approached me and was willing to cover the cost of the IVF, no strings attached. But we did not accept the offer. And if I recollect correctly, it was for two main reasons. For me, I felt I would be in debt, one way or the other, to that person. And for my wife, she felt going the IVF way is not trusting in the Lord. And based on that, we dropped it. But in retrospect, we missed the mark and violated the principle of the absolute or infinite way, we do not need to know the how, but in that moment we were fixated on it happening in a particular way. Never you worry about the how, but be very clear about what you really want and abide in the truth that you can never lack that which seems to be lacking. And as you abide in truth, pay attention to the inner leadings and watch how the rhythm of spirit flows and orchestrates things in a natural and beautiful way in response to that which you have realized within yourself. This reminds me of a parable of the drowning man, also known as two boats and a helicopter story, about a devoutly Christian man who refuses several rescue attempts in the face of approaching floodwaters, each time telling the would-be rescuers that God will save him. After turning down the last, he drowns in the flood. After his death, the man meets God and asks why he did not intervene. God responds that he sent all the would-be rescuers to the man's aid on the expectation he will accept the help. I leave you with this favorite Fitch statement, and I quote, "Where do you begin and where does God end? Is there a place where God ends and you begin? And if you can find that place where God ends and you begin, you will not be in the absolute truth." Think about it a moment. Is there a God and you, or is there a God without a beginning and without an ending? And now try to find yourself in that picture. Now, if you want to be absolute and you find no place where God ends and you begin, then you must go deeper than the surface of that understanding. You must then act from that awareness. See if you can accept that there is no place where God ends and you begin. And when you feel you can accept it, make the correction in consciousness. Firmly, knowing you can never go back to a place where there is a separation between God and yourself. And now go even deeper, because there is no place where God ends and I begin. I and the Father are one. But God is Spirit, and if you have pledged yourself to absolute truth, you must now accept that because God does not end and you begin, but God is continuous and God is Spirit. The only reality to which you can answer is, I am Spirit.
We are dealing now with the rhythm of God, the rhythm that pulsates throughout the universe in a very special way. You flow with it or you flow against it. And what you experience is determined by your awareness of what you are doing in relation to that rhythm of God. It's like the ocean, you might say. It ebbs and it flows, and it would be foolhardy to stand against it. So it is with the rhythm of the Spirit. It is an absolute necessity for God to individualize as you. And if you are in the belief that you have a human mission, then you are in conflict with the activity of God, which is individualizing as you. It is the pleasure of the Father to individualize as you by giving you the kingdom. And it is your mission not to fulfill yourself humanly, but rather to release into experience the treasures of the kingdom of God. When you give yourself a name called I, and you apply that name to the human self, you are using the name of the Lord in vain. I is the Spirit of God. I is the name of that Spirit of God. When you say I, and you mean the mortal who inhabits a graven image, you are using the name of God in vain. Now, it makes no difference what post you occupy in the human world, how high you have risen in your profession, how high you have risen in the religious world or in the scientific world. When you say I and you mean you, the mortal self, you are violating the third commandment. We have done it. We will continue to do it. And there will be some who will say, I know that in the progression from the sense of mortality to the experience and realization of immortality, there can be no substitutions. Everything set down before us by the Father is the only path. And so, I patiently, assiduously, with total scrupulous attention to detail, watch every thought to be sure that it is what the Father has directed me to do. The Father has said there is only one cause, one source, one creator, and have no other source, no other cause, no other creator than me, the Spirit of God in you. Then the Father says, you must now cross out the graven image. And now the Father says, thou shalt not use the name of the Lord in vain. And the name of the Lord is I. And there have been 100 times this day and the last day and the day before when we have said I, referring not to the infinite Spirit, but referring only to the graven image. And then we have looked across the room and say, he over there or she over there. And that is the same as saying I over here. We have again not identified the true I. Now I can say this for the next 10 years, and there will be many persons who will be totally unimpressed. Probably of the 100 that are here, in a week's time from now, many will have forgotten it. And I would like to say to those who will have forgotten it, you will then make yourself vulnerable, because the rhythm of Spirit must flow. And when you are not in the rhythm of Spirit, you are in the rhythm of the world mind, and you are dashed against the rocks. Whoever lives in the world mind is vulnerable, controlled, captive. I have seen people who have tried with all the deepest dedication and sincerity possible, and could not stop themselves from living in the rhythm of the world mind, because they had not persuaded themselves that I must always be the living Spirit of God and not I, a mortal being. And so part of your transformation is the determination to stop, to look closely at what Spirit says through the third commandment, and to make a decision. Up to a certain point, we had no choice. We lived willy-nilly in the world mind, and eventually we passed out of the picture. Now we're not only given a choice, we're given a method. I is the method. But I means infinite I. I does not mean the temporary mortal who dies. I does not mean the finite. I does not mean the limited or the destructible or the one who is in opposition with others. I means identity. Now, it is quite a sacrifice to give up mortality. You don't quit your job tomorrow. You don't close down your house. You do this within yourself. You accept that you are no longer studying the infinite way. You are the infinite way. I. And if you will make this distinction within yourself, that I am the infinite way, you will find that a certain degree of duality is dissolved. Now let's see what the Father says through Moses in the totality of this third commandment. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Not holding you guiltless means that the moment you identify as a mortal being, you're in the karmic stream. Now, as you leave the finite sense of being for a moment and dwell on a higher level of awareness, you can come to grips with that force called the world mind, which has been so puzzling, so baffling, so unknown to mankind. And you will see that the only way you can overcome the world mind is through this commandment. Not taking the name of the Lord in vain, for only your infinite I, self, will dissolve the world mind. The issues are not on the level of man. There's no way to conquer world mind as a human being. And this is the weapon. You stand in awe. Now, it may seem at the moment as a very small weapon to you, but you are dealing with a force that is invisible, subtle, almost unknown and obscure. And yet, the moment you have touched I within yourself, the world mind is powerless to control you. I is not living in this passing minute. You must learn when you have surrendered the I. You must recognize those moments when, through unawareness of your identity as the infinite way, the infinite self, the infinite being, you have surrendered to the world mind. You must learn to recognize those moments. And if you are living in the minute that has gone by, and part of you has died in that minute that went by, and part of you will die in the next minute, you are not that I. For God is not dying in passing minutes. Spirit is not influenced by passing minutes, passing days, passing years. And so when you accept the passing years, you are not identifying as I. You are identifying as me. And you are labeling a me where only the Spirit of God is. There's no one where you are but the Spirit of God. And it takes quite a degree of resolution not to run pell-mell into the next minute as a me, because there's something there that is attractive to you. Now, who among us is willing to do this? Only those who have pledged their lives to being spiritual beings. You see, this is not a place anymore for compromise. There is no way to proceed with compromise. You must stand consciously aware of every thought, every deed, every wind, so that you are always conscious of the fact that your name, your identity, and your qualities are I. For God will not hold him guiltless who uses the name of the Lord in vain. Now, you will catch yourselves many times about to say, I am going to the store, I am going to do this, and I am going to do that, and that's perfectly all right. But if you make the effort to live in the eye of being, you will find yourself living in the kingdom of God. You must always know when you're using the little I and when you should be using the big I. Because I, little of my own self, can do nothing, but I, the Father within, can do all things. Now, when you are willing to accept His commandment, and not your own personal judgment of whether you're going to do things His way or not, then you invoke spiritual law. You can't bring spiritual law into play because you have decided to do it your way. It won't work any other way. These are unique commandments. They must be done. And so Jesus, when he speaks, says, verily, I say unto you. To enforce the idea that these are not the words external to yourself, they are the words of I in the midst of you, always teaching, always pleading to follow the words of I, because only I can take you into the fifth world. You cannot go there on your human initiative. You cannot go there by fulfilling your human sense of a mission. And your only mission is to enter the fifth world. Now we have a difficult time if we have been living by our own human resources, especially if we've been very capable and been able to show a great degree of success. How can we relinquish all our capabilities? And yet, everything shows us that unless we are the meek, we cannot inherit the earth. We are being trained to be living souls working in the Father's kingdom, serving the Spirit, impersonalized, faithful, dependable, loving the Spirit with all our heart, with all our mind, with all our soul. That doesn't appeal to many people. It seems like no life at all. But is that any concern of ours if this is the life we wish to choose? Now let us look at some passages in Revelation which show us of those who have had this particular state of awareness and have made their choices, and those who have not. And let us try to capture with a degree of certainty the issues that are involved, so that when we make our decision, to accept I as immortal or mortal as we have been doing in the past, we know why we are making that decision and what we may expect if we make one decision as against another. First, let's look at Revelation 13. We'll just look at the 11th verse on for a moment. I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. This is the second beast. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound we heal. Now you'll notice that these two beasts are the world mind and the individual mind of the human being, so that we have a relay system in which every human mind is within the world mind, so that one beast controls the second beast. This is the purpose of the symbolism, to let you know that your human mind, which may be the president of a college or the chief magistrate of a city or the chief doctor of surgery at the local hospital, your human mind is within the world mind. And even when you operate and you help someone physically, the words of Christ are that Satan is healing Satan. Those are his very words. The world mind heals its own false creation, and then we worship the world mind. Now we have a second beast, which is the individual mind, which is glued into the world mind and takes orders from it. And we think this is our superior mind. This is the mind of me. When a human says I, he's referring to I, this mind of mine, this intelligence of mine, this capability of mine. And it's all the capability and intelligence of the world mind, which he does not know is the father of his human mind. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And we watch these wonders. He might be referring to the great achievements of industry, the great discoveries of the human mind, the great advancements in our various categories of human life, great wonders, fire from the sky, and always the hope that tomorrow something better will come. We all live on this hope, don't we? We all live on the hope that improvements are coming about. Governments will clean up their types of leadership. Men will become more noble in their aspirations. Love will descend. War will end. But they never do. Because the world mind is running the world, not God. And the world mind is running the minds of the people in the world, not God. And every one of these minds in the world is saying I, meaning me, this person. I am the president. I am the vice president. I am the chairman of the board. And where is the I that is the only I, the real I? Not part of that understanding. And ultimately, the Tower of Babel crumbles. It cannot reach heaven. Even these great miracles of fire only persuade those who walk in the false sense of self. I've heard that down in Taiwan there is great healing work being done. I've heard it described as in biblical times. You walk through the streets practically, and blind are healed, the deaf are healed, the crippled are healed, scales fall off their eyes. And I'm sure that these missionaries are reporting the truth as they see it. And then you ask yourself, what is really happening? That all happened also in biblical times. For what good came up? These were the miracles of the human mind. Satan healing Satan. World mind healing its own creation. Nothing in it of a spiritual nature. And therefore, it simply becomes human betterment, which is temporary. And again, man thinks God has done these things. and then cannot understand when God refuses to do them again. You see, then, we are breaking barriers of accepting false miracles, of expecting a God to help mortality. We instead are stepping out of mortality. And deceive them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had a wound by a sword, and did live. To make an image to the beast. This is the graven image of the human mind. Once it finds what is called a healing in the human sense, it now believes God has done something. And it takes this temporary sense of relief as a God experience, and later, to its own complete discouragement, finds that it was not a God experience at all. Nothing external can give you a God experience. Nobody waving an arm or touching with the hands or pronouncing famous words or formularized words. The God experience is the inner self expressing, releasing you from the sense of mortality. Now, John here is giving us an insight into the superstitious nature of the human mind, and how hungry it is for help, and how grateful it is when it receives the help, even though it is not the help of the Spirit. It's the help of the invisible beast. It's as if we are so grateful when war is stopped and a peace treaty is signed. We say, this is marvelous. We have peace. But we only have temporary peace until the next war. Or we have a healing, but only temporary until the next problem. This is the limited viewpoint of material sense. And the third commandment is telling you how to break this limited viewpoint. I need no healing. I am already healed. I need no increase in anything. I already am the fulfillment of Spirit. When you identify as that I, not as the one who needs the healing, not as the one who needs the improvement, not as the one who is seeking peace or security or any human betterment, but as the one who has, because I am the Spirit of God. I am infinity. You bring into play the law of one source, one cause, one divine rhythm, and you are in harmony with that rhythm. And your healing is for all time. Your unlimitation is for all time. And you're not catering to the passing form in the passing minutes, but you're accepting the invisible self, which ever is. Now, this is the higher road for us, the road that is difficult to discern, the road that many would rather not take because the vision is too high. And John wants us to know the decoy and the lure of the lower road. both for one man because he'll bring us prosperity, another man because he makes another promise. And then we blame the man because he doesn't fulfill the promise. This is all mortal. This is not the divine Son. He had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Can you see what is being said there? You realize that this is talking about mortal beings who are the image of the beast, who must worship mortality and be killed. Do you see the high insight that is pouring forth through John? That every human being is a child of the beast and must die because the beast is the father of lies, a murderer from the start, as the Christ has told us. Do you see why we cannot walk across the street and forget this? Do you see why the earth is dark instead of light? And so the challenge comes, who among you will slay the beast? Who among you will stand up and say, I am not mortal. I am not the graven image. I am not the person. I am not the flesh. I am the only begotten Son of the living God, not the dying beast. That third commandment has stood there all these years, staring religion in the face. And millions have walked through those portals of religion unaware that they were committing suicide by not following the third commandment. That is the darkness that has been on the earth. The false identification, the faith in the world mind, thinking it was faith in God. And the God of religion is the world mind. Man worships the world mind, not God. That is why the first commandment was given. Stop worshiping the world mind. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. But man did not understand. Stop being a graven image, committing suicide daily, but man did not understand. Identify yourself as I, Spirit. That is your name, but man did not understand. Some did understand. John saw those. He saw the ones who understood. His description of them is to me very beautiful, and I'd like you to hear it just the way he saw it. It's in Revelation 20, verse 4. And you will understand it a certain way because of what we have done up to this point. I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them, and I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus. the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus. You see, he was looking into the fifth world, seeing those who had done what you and I are learning we must do. To be beheaded for the witness of Jesus really means to deny your mortality, to accept I as your name. And this is being beheaded, giving up the sense of mortality for the witness of Jesus, in order to accept I am the invisible Christ. And when you are willing to deny thyself as mortal, deny the mortal instincts, the mortal emotions, the mortal desires, the mortal needs, and to transfer your attention to I, Christ, the Son of God, the infinite one, I, the living eternal self, then you graduate into this area that John is seeing, where you are among those souls who have overcome the sense of mortality. And this is in the fifth world. This is where you move into. This is your ascension to the fifth world. And to me, this is the purpose of what we are all here for. Not only in this room, but on this earth. To move into the fifth world, because this is the rhythm of the Spirit of God individualizing. First into the fifth as a living soul who has now renounced and overcome the graven image called mortality, and walks free, but is still not complete, still not a bride of the Spirit, but learning, but now in a state of service to the Spirit. And this is the next experience, rather than reincarnation, if you have caught the divine vision, if you have felt the pulse of his rhythm saying, rise, come up, ascend, come higher. Make the transmutation from physical form to spiritual body. And approach that moment of transition when, as a living soul, free of the impurity of mortal thought, you move into the fifth world. They were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the Word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their forehead or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. They had not worshipped the beast. They didn't have his image in their forehead. His image in their foreheads means they no longer had a mortal sense of life. They no longer worshipped the beast called world mind, thinking they were worshiping God. They had shattered the dream of mortality. But who are these souls? Did they not walk upon the earth as we walk? Were they not so-called human beings at one time? Where did their wisdom come from? It came from that incredible something called love. Love of the Spirit and the Spirit of love. Not human love, not limited love, not changing love, but a love so strong that it could overcome the sense of anything unlike God. A fierce love. A love that refused to be submerged in the confusion of this world. A love perhaps born of strife, of pain, an ecstasy born of agony, but there, so strong that an individual can say, I am that Spirit of God and no other. No one can convince me of sin. Nothing can move me out of this knowledge that I am that I am. That love pulsing through you will give you the strength. It would rather suffer than surrender to the world mind. It will not worship the beast, nor will it worship the image cast forth by the beast, called the human form. In Isaiah, you can feel what must happen within your very being in order to overcome the tide of world opinion, world belief. (61:1). Let's look at it. You've heard it many times. Hear it now inside yourself. Try to see that Spirit which has placed this in words through Isaiah is speaking this always within you, to give you the awareness, the insight, courage to accept the rhythm of God. Accept yourself now as the living Spirit. So that your own being is speaking these words. Not Isaiah, not the Bible. Your Spirit speaks the words of God. Your Spirit within you, which is free and eternal. It is this inner voice speaking that will lead you out of mortality if you are ready to move out of it while appearing in the form. Only this inner voice, this inner intelligence, can lead you out. So you must open that way. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me. This is that very Spirit in Isaiah forcing its way through because he has opened our way. And so it comes unto you. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon you. It is the rhythm of the universe. It is the power of the one source. It carries with it love, harmony, beauty, life without end. It carries with it its own life. its own wisdom, its own perfect will. It is always present as your very being. And in the realization of it, you feel the surge of spiritual awareness saying, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me. Because the Lord hath anointed me. That means that you have been lifted into a conscious awareness of the living Spirit of your being. The Lord hath anointed me. You are conscious of the activity of your own spirit. But now, I, the living Spirit in the midst of you, flowing through you, pulsing through you, am teaching you that I am present, and that I am powerful, and that I come quickly because I am already here. And I dissolve all that is unlike myself. I am the I of your being. I am the I that you are. I and no other. This I is going to liberate us from all form of limitation. But only if you have opened out a way for it to flow through your consciousness. Only if you have stood daily identifying as I, the Spirit of God. It will not flow through a mortal being. It will not flow through a human selfhood. It will not express. It will not speak. It will not move the mountain. I only flows through I. The Spirit of the Lord God is your name. And when your consciousness is alive with that knowledge, you are anointed. To preach good tidings unto the meek. Who are those meek? It is you, it is him, it is her, it is every one who has submerged the human ego. I have no human mission. You have no human mission. That is your meekness. Your mission is to do the will of the Father. Thy will be done. And in that meekness, the word of the Father within is preached to you, to those who have opened the way with the inner desire to serve the living Spirit alone, not to serve mankind, but to serve the living Spirit. Blessed are those who have surrendered the human ego. They shall inherit the earth. And through Isaiah, the Spirit is announcing, like a trumpet, that it is present. It is alive. It isn't tomorrow. It isn't in the second coming. It is present right there, now, here, everywhere. I am come. to all who are meek. And meekness is those who have surrendered mortal sins. Then the puffed up ego is no longer there. We're no longer standing on the corner telling Spirit which way to go, directing traffic, influencing Spirit or persuading it, but rather we are its self-expression. The rhythm of the universe flows through as your living being. I hope you're getting the feeling of what Isaiah is pouring forth here. The Spirit of the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted. Those who are separated from Spirit are the brokenhearted. The human race separated from Spirit is broken-hearted. To bind up the wounds of those who are broken-hearted. Only Spirit can remove the dilemmas that we face on this so-called earth. And even though you cannot change the world, you can transform your consciousness. If you remain the one who is separated from Spirit, you are the brokenhearted, or still bruised. The availability of Spirit is being stressed, and the power of Spirit to transcend every human ailment, every human deficiency. And ultimately, to lift you out of the fourth world into the fifth. It's the flow of Spirit as your identity which makes the transition. And it's important that you know it makes the transition. To proclaim liberty to the captive. Now these captives are all human minds which are lingering in the world mind. The human sense mind is the captive. And of course the so-called body it creates is a captive within that mind. And here you see that the liberator is not Jesus. The liberator is not a man. The liberator is not a religion. The liberator is not human faith. The liberator is the flowing of Spirit through you as your identity. That is the liberator of the captive. And we, who are not spiritually conscious, we are the captive. And to proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to them that are not bound. Just like Peter. The opening of the prison to them that are not bound. When the handcuffs fall off Peter, when he's free, when he can move out of that prison, you know he has found his soul back. This flow of Spirit in you is creating that body which cannot be held captive, which alone makes transition. Now then, we who are not willing to renounce mortality have not caught the meaning of the infinite way. And although we may be more advanced than some others somewhere, we are still lingering and vulnerable. And the purpose of these meetings are to clarify and and to accentuate that if a trace of mortality remains, you still have that heel, that Achilles heel. And therefore, I, spirit, must live in the identity that I am not ever a mortal being. I must diminish the sense of mortality and magnify the spirit. My soul doth magnify the Lord, said Mary. And if the way is getting too narrow, then the love of the Father has not yet illuminated the way forth. But if the challenge is there, and there's a ready response of the heart to walk that narrow path, the way is there, and the illumination does come. And to help you, Spirit makes another step. Because some of you have made your inner decisions to move in the way of the Christ at all costs, and hopeful that because you have made that decision, the way will open. It will. And so those who have completed not the work of the first three commandments, but the understanding that they will follow those commandments, are then treated to the fourth. When you are willing to accept only perfect cause, that is the one, a perfect spiritual universe, willing not to live in its so-called opposite, which is the material universe, and to know that it is but a shadow of truth, and then to make that final decision that because I am going to live only in the universe of spirit, I must be spirit. I must identify as spirit. I must act as spirit. Then spirit shows you the way. Again, another step. And that's the step I want you to take home tonight. It says, honor the Sabbath day. The fourth commandment tells you how to fill and fulfill the first three. Honor the Sabbath day. You say to yourself, what is the Sabbath day? Man thinks it's Sunday. That he works for 5 or 6 days, and then on Sunday is the Sabbath day. But it isn't. There are 6 days of creation, and then the Sabbath day is the 7th day of creation. Honor the 7th day of creation, and that is the way you find the strength, the courage, and the capacity to renounce the belief in mortality which God did not create. Honor the 7th day. Honor the perfection of God, the day in which God rested because all was finished, and honor the finished kingdom now. Honor the Sabbath means honor the finished kingdom. Honor the 7th day of creation. Accept it as a present fact. Live consciously in the finished kingdom of perfection, knowing it is present. And that's where you get your help. It's not striving to find anything, but accepting it as being present. You could go on for another 5,000 years trying to find the treasures of the kingdom, but accept them as present. Here, now, honor the Sabbath. And so in your decision to renounce mortality, materiality, It is not just a turning away from one thing, it is also an accepting of another. It's not a negative. It's also a positive. And it becomes a one action, a negative, positive, one action, which is the acceptance of the presence of perfect Spirit everywhere. The seventh day becomes where you live in your consciousness. That is the Sabbath. And in the living consciously in the seventh day, you live in the present perfection of Spirit in all ways. And it's only by aspiring to this higher level of the seventh day that you're ultimately going to be lifted up to the fifth. You must overshoot the mark. And if you aim high enough and live consciously enough in the presence of the seventh day of perfection, you will find the strength to shatter the dream and break through into the realm of soul. Because only the seventh day, which is the day of Christ, can take you up to the next rung of Jacob's ladder. Let us meditate now on the meaning of the seventh day. The seventh day means perfection is. The day of God's rest meant all is now perfect. It includes the 6 days of creation. It includes the 6 levels of consciousness, so that you don't have to go through each one individually, but rather in accepting the fullness of the seventh, all else is integrated and synchronized without your personal effort. Live consciously in the finished perfection everywhere. That's an automatic rejection of every form of deficiency or imperfection. It's a denial of the presence of perfection. And you're trusting the false sense mind which says it isn't here. I don't see it. I can't touch it. I can't spend it. We don't do that. We honor the seventh day. We honor the presence of the perfection of my Spirit in all things. We don't honor the finite. We don't honor the limited. We don't honor the opposition. We honor that which is unopposed, because it is the only. Perfection has no opposition. It is here. That is not mortal, is it? There's no such thing as mortal perfection. And you honor it because you are not mortal. You see, you're being loyal to what you are. You're being consistent. If I am the Spirit, I must honor every spiritual quality as present, as perfect, as functioning. And I cannot honor its opposite and be I the Spirit, because then I'd be using the Lord's name in vain. So you must take the fourth commandment with the third in order to make it work. I cannot honor the graven image. I cannot honor the physical form. I cannot honor the deficiencies of the physical form or the physical life. I must honor the Sabbath, the seventh day of creation, as present, finished, perfect, working, here. This is where you live, in your consciousness. You're literally hanging your hat on a star. You're reaching far out into the fullness of being and accepting it as a finished product. And that consciousness is ultimately going to shatter the beast, the world mind, the non-existent hypnosis which makes us not worship the reality of being and forces us into a false sense of life. Now please take home then tonight that unless you have hitched your wagon to a star called the seventh day, the Sabbath day, the perfect day, as ever present, you are rejecting your own spiritual identity. You'll find that in some unique way, you have set in motion the wheels that are obeying 4 commandments at once when you honor the Sabbath. Now, last night, you worked with I am not in the form, and this morning you worked with I am not in the form. You'll discover that when you work with the Sabbath or the seventh day, the perfect day, although you're not consciously working with I am not in the form, you'll have the same result. While you're working with the perfection of spirit, you're not conscious of form. And so the result follows just as if you had consciously tried not to recognize the existence of the form. And ultimately you'll find it's a better way. But you must know that there are times when you are conscious of form that you must become unconscious of form. And if you will work on the seventh day level, you'll find that the consciousness of form begins to dissolve itself. Now that's another way to meditate, to take the Sabbath or seventh day of perfection into consciousness, dwell upon the meaning of it, until it carries you beyond just human thought and you just rest in the Word, feeling the rhythm of the universe. I think perhaps we can accept that it's 9. I would like, if you can, to move right into the seventh day, the first thing in the morning, together, and begin our work in the seventh day of creation. And so if you will try to make that preparation and come with the awareness that that is the consciousness that will best serve for that very morning, it will help. So until then, many blessings.